about butter. So the butter we get at the grocery store that's mass produced is not exactly the same as what most people would have grown up with if they had made their own butter or bought it from someone locally. So take for example my mother's family. So mama's parents that I grew up very close to had a milk cow while the kids were growing up. My mother even said that she remembers my grandmama making butter and using a butter mold and selling it to the grocery stores in town for extra money because they didn't need all the butter. When I was small, my grandparents had cows and hogs. They didn't have chickens when I was growing up, which is really weird, come to think of it, because that's something my parents and I always had was chickens, more pets than anything else. But anyway, I remember begging my grandfather. I was like, Papa, I want a milk cow. Will you buy a milk cow? I'll pay for it. And he's like, you do not understand what you're asking for. It's not as easy as having beef cattle. I mean, when you have dairy cows, and especially when they're fresh or in milk, twice a day, every day, rain, shine, you're sick, somebody's at the hospital, it's a holiday, it doesn't matter. You have to milk the cow. So, my grandparents had milk cows for quite a while when my mom was smaller. Not when I was on the pit scene. They didn't have them anymore. But anyway, they would milk the cow twice a day. You let the raw milk sit, and the cream rises to the top. So those of you that might remember having milkman service, I'm sure there's some people out there that still remember that. You know, you would get the milk delivered to your house and there would always be the cream on top because it wasn't homogenized. Homogenization is a process that is making it a consistent throughout. So you don't have the separation of the milk fats and the butter fats from the liquid portion of the milk. Now, if you take that cream off top, which now we get as heavy cream, whipping cream, etc., and then the milk is either further processed into whole milk, 1%, 2%, or skim, that's just saying how much milk solid and milk fat's in it. That's why it's lower calorie. There's not as much of the protein and fat in it. Anyway, so if you take that cream off the top, what they would do is as the cream had set, natural flora and fauna in the environment is kind of helping to curdle that cream a little bit and change its texture and the protein structure, and you get a different flavor. So we can still get kind of the same effect at home if we set the milk out and inoculate it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take whole cream from the grocery store. We're going to inoculate it. You can use yogurt, you could use buttermilk, you could buy actually cultures that are powder or liquid form that you can add in. But we're just going to use regular cultured buttermilk that I have at the grocery store and I keep on hand for baking. We're going to add it and to the cream that I buy and let it sit out overnight at between 70 and 75 degrees. And what will happen is the good bugs in the cultured buttermilk or the other cultured yogurt, whatever you're using, is going to populate the cream. I know a lot of people get kind of when you hear about leaving dairy out on the counter, but this is just the same process if you were going to make yogurt or anything else. We're just going to make butter. So then what we'll do is we will churn it. I'll show you how to do it in a stand mixer. You could use a jar and shake it. You could use a hand mixer, but both of those would take longer. And if you have a stand mixer, it's just so much easier. Something I actually borrowed from my parents for this to show you is my grandmother's churn. So this was actually the last churn that they had at the farm that they used. They only had 1 or 2 milk cows at a time, so they didn't have a huge quantity to deal with. But it's actually a Daisy electric churn. Has a little feeder at the bottom. Super short cord. I mean, that always kind of fascinated me that the cord's so short. But anyway, this is the motor, so this is where your heft is. And then it's a glass jar. You would have, Grandma would have scalded and cleaned all this with boiling water and dried it. Then she would have added her cream, plugged it in, it would rotate it, and there you have it. My father actually rewired this, and it does work, but I'd rather not use it. It's just safer and easier to use the stand mixer. But I wanted to show you what something from the 50s, 60s, up to the 60s would have looked like that small farmers would have used for home usage. So, now let's go make some butter. So to make cultured buttermilk, what you're going to do is use 1 quart of cream. The best cream you can find. If you can find raw, that's the best. Most of us don't have access to that. You're going to want to use the best you can find. Do not use ultra pasteurized cream. That actually generally has gums and other types of food additives that'll prevent your butter from really being its best. So 1 quart of cream to about a 1/2 cup of your inoculant. You can use Lactive Live Culture buttermilk, yogurt, sour cream. If you have some of the buttermilk or whey left over from the last time you made this, you can save that back and use it. I keep buttermilk on hand for baking, so that's what we're using. So we're going to mix that in. You want to make sure you stir it well to get that culture all the way through your mix. Once you've done that, we're actually going to cover this loosely and let it incubate between 70 and 75 degrees, so a room temperature in most people's homes, for about 24 hours before we're able to refrigerate it and then churn it. Don't let the fact that this is dairy and is sitting out on your counter for 24 hours frighten you. This is what would happen any other. You're making a milk product. The good bacteria that we put in has to be able to liven up and start digesting the proteins and sugars that are in this in order to make that flavorful butter. So I'm going to cover this loosely, leave it on the counter, and I'll see you guys tomorrow with this next step. Okay, so it's been almost 24 hours. Well, more like 20-ish hours. And as you can see, the cream and buttermilk mixture has become extremely thick. So now what we're going to do is put this bowl on our stand mixer with a whisk. It's going to need to whisk for about 5 to 10 minutes depending, and I'll show you throughout the process what you're looking for as the butter coagulates. As you can see, the milk solids are starting to separate from the whey or the buttermilk, so we're getting very close to the finished product. So this came together very quickly, less than 5 minutes, and we have butter separated from the buttermilk. So now what we need to do is wash out what's remaining of the liquid portion in the butter with cold ice water, and that'll help preserve it, and we'll add a little bit of salt. Okay, so I've already washed my hands really well. We've got the buttermilk, which is now separated from the butter fat solids. I washed out my sink. Everything's been cleaned very well. And what I'm going to do is try to squeeze out what I can of the solid. This will squeeze out some of that whey buttermilk. Now, what you can do, people would have had butter paddles, which I obviously don't have, and they would literally work the butter in the pan, and what they would be trying to do is work out the extra liquid. See? See how much is coming out? Because that's going to give your butter a non-desirable texture, as well as hasten or shorten the shelf life. Look at how much is coming out. So we're just going to continue to work this, try to get as much as we can. See? Quite a bit. Now,
this is ice water. Well, it was. It's kind of ran out. Ice is milk, I should say. You're going to rinse the butter. There again, you're still getting out that whey component. And you're using cold water because obviously you don't want the butter to melt. And I'll be the first to admit, I am no pro with this. I don't do it enough. See how much clearer that water is than what we were working with a moment ago? Now the next thing you can do if you choose is you can salt your butter. Just add a little bit of salt. And you would work that in. You can see a little bit of moisture still coming out. Cultured butter. So I'll put this in a good catch. I'll put this in a container and show you what it looks like when it's completely finished.
Okay, so you churned your butter, you separated the milk solids from the whey or buttermilk, and then you washed it in ice cold water. As you'll notice in the video, I forgot to chill my cream mixture that had cultured overnight on the counter before churning it. That's why it was extremely soft at the end and it was a little bit sticky on my hands. If I had chilled that, the butter solids would have probably separated a little bit easier and got a little bit more bulk out of it, as well as been a lot easier when I went to the shaping and washing stages. So just let that be a lesson to you. Don't do what I did. Remember to chill it. I was in a hurry and just forgot. Normally, if the butter had been more solid from the chilling process, you can put it through a mold. I have a butter mold somewhere. Don't ask me where it's at. I think it's in storage in my garage, and my garage is a big mess right now. But any container will do. So this is our finished product. I mean, it's a beautiful yellow color. You can see that it is just as firm as any other butter would be that you would buy at the store. A little piece of crusty bread. There you go. I mean, I don't need to tell you how to use butter. It's butter. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I don't know, do you have any ideas about what you want to talk about another time? Let me know in the comments down below.